tech pipeline, right? So we're going to be hearing, see, I stand again. We're going to be hearing about pipeline issues, right? And so like that pipeline issue and that pipeline conversation comes from research and education too, looking at the ways in which the pipeline for Latinos in academia, in higher education, from K through college, is full of leaks, right? And so we're trying to think about this, the analogy here in tech. And so we've asked our panelists today to talk a little bit about their work and how their work, right, is related to questions of issues of pipeline, but also not necessarily how, you know, the fact that Latinos don't make it through the pipeline, whether it is academic or in the tech world, right? It's not because there's something individually, personally wrong with people, right? But that there are systems, right? There's a systemic issue that prevents Latinos from advancing, right? And so that's related again to our question of diversity, right, for the conference. But I want to start by asking a couple of, first saying one recommendation that I've just been told is that because we are doing an audio feed, that it would be important for all of us to speak to the microphone, right? So before I forget that. And we're going to follow the same pattern for the first panel, and we're gonna start by, I'm gonna introduce each of the speakers, and then there will be a couple of questions that I'll pose for the panel, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments from the audience, yeah? I'm not gonna say all that's on the program because I want to make sure that there is a space for you to also say some things that are not captured here that you know and feel that they're important for us to know today, yeah? So let me start by first introducing Jacob Martinez, who is the founder and executive director of Digital Nest, and with an incredible background, earning his bachelor in science in ecology and evolutionary biology at UC Santa Cruz. We see a pattern here, okay? And it's a very good one. And went on to complete his master's in instructional science and technology at Cal State University, Monterey Bay. And before founding, I don't know if funding, but definitely founding the Digital Nest, Jacob spent 7 years serving as Watsonville's tech project director, where he sought not only to build the programming skills and confidence of Watsonville youth, but also took part in a project that worked on encouraging Latinas to enter the tech industry. So we're gonna see that theme about mentoring Latinas is part of this, is central to this panel. Do you wanna add something to your introduction? And before you do that, we're just gonna clap for you and welcome you here.
Thank you. So yeah, I am the founder and executive director of Digital Nest. It's relatively new in this space where we officially launched in January 2014. We have our first, what we do is we develop tech centers in the same model that you see in a lot of these tech companies. So we took those environmental workplace models that you see at Google, Facebook, Twitter, and applied it to youth technology centers in predominantly rural and agricultural communities like Watsonville. So we have our first center in Watsonville, and we're opening our second center in Salinas in January 2017. And then we're looking at how do we keep going down the central corridor there and then beyond California as well. So thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to be amongst all of you. I'm going to speak about the pipeline, but I'm going to speak about it from the local context and not so much on how do we get more people of color, more Latinos into Silicon Valley, but how do we keep more of that talent locally in our communities and get that talent to get the better paying jobs that are in our communities. So the pipeline, it is broken. There is problems. And we see that from the day that our youth are born into the communities that have placed our people in these communities, these low-income, struggling communities. We see it from the moment that they're born. So they are in these communities where there's lack of infrastructure. There is challenges around getting access to high-speed internet, getting adequate technology technology in the home, having parents that can support them in their tech interest and endeavors. I found, I consider myself highly educated and doing pretty well, and in the space of computer science education and tech education, but yet I have a 13 and 12-year-old that I'm struggling with on a daily basis on how to manage their internet use. And so here I am struggling with this, and how our predominantly Spanish-speaking parents that are in the fields from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. supporting their youth along the same pathways. And as we go into the K-12 arena, so out of the home and into the schools, you see the same challenges in the schools, where the schools are getting a lot of pressure to perform, increase their performance in math and reading. Those computer labs are outdated, not supported. The courses that are being taught are typically keyboarding, how to build a PowerPoint, how to use Microsoft Word, and taught by teachers that aren't trained in tech, or some of them not even interested in tech. And then on top of it all, there is no AP computer science in a lot of these low-income communities. And as we move into the higher education, if we are successful and we're encouraging some of our youth to go on pursue computer science in college, they find themselves light years behind their peers in terms of their ability to program, their comfort with technology, their ability to be fluent in not just literate, but fluent in technology. And then again, they find themselves in environments where they're one of the few people of color, where they're struggling to have all the tools, the software that they need for their classes, and often we see the youth dropping out, switching majors as they enter college. I'm always kind of concerned about where am I pushing my students if I'm really pushing computer science education? What type of environments am I encouraging them to go into? And I have, for myself, my own kind of personal struggles with doing that. So if they are successful and they leave college and they get a job at Silicon Valley and get into one of these big tech companies, hooray for them, but it doesn't do anything for our communities, right? We see this phenomenon, similar to how we see a lot of our youth go off to college, never come back to the community. So there's this brain drain where we're losing some of our top talent to Silicon Valley, yet there's good paying jobs in companies in their local communities or opportunities in their communities that our youth are not going into. So the work of the Digital Nest that I'm doing is how do we build a local workforce that is competing for the better paying jobs that are in their communities. We do have big companies in communities like Watsonville and Salinas, but those jobs are not going to the youth. And I've been meeting with a lot of these companies, and they've straight up told me that the youth in the community don't have the skills and the talent to get those jobs. So we are working on how do we build a local workforce to get those jobs, as well as how do we launch new endeavors in our communities to spark new opportunities. With this idea that if we're able to get the youth in our community to stay in our community, get those jobs, that we'll see the local tax base increase, we'll see the tax money going into the school system, providing better infrastructure for the schools, raising the educational attainment of the youth in those schools, and hopefully seeing those youth buy homes in their communities, live in their communities, shop in their communities, and raising the economic well-being of those communities. If we're successful in doing that, we could see shifts in communities like Watsonville that are struggling economically, and not be victims of gentrification. So if we're able to get the youth to buy the homes in the community and not continuously getting pushed out further and further on the outskirts, and again, just kind of seeing that problems continue, that cycle continue. So we're really focused on how do we do that locally. Secondarily is Silicon Valley. Yes, we want to diversify Silicon Valley, but for us it's more important to keep our youth local and get them to build those communities from within, and not, again, be subject to gentrification, getting pushed out. So I'm really excited about being part of this discussion, being amongst all of you, and seeing how we can continue the growth of diversity in Silicon Valley, but also in our local communities as well. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Juanita Berber, yeah? And she's from the Level Playing Field Institute SMASH program. She's a graduate from the program. Yes. And the Muñoz Accelerator for Latino startups as well. So she has also interned at the Capor Center for Social Impact and also at the Level Playing Field Institute. She's also a student at Laney College studying computer and information systems with a side of social justice. So, and when not working, you are near a beach or on a basketball court, and so it's good to see and to hear what our very talented panelists are doing, right? As part also of how we get inspiration from you, from the work and the activities to the side. But if there are other things you want to add, also please be sure to do that and tell us a little bit about your work. And before that, a big welcome to Juanita Berber.
I just want to thank Level Playing Field Institute, and now I'm a part of Code 2040's family, so I'm very blessed to be part of those two organizations. So I didn't know how to start I spent a whole week trying to prepare for the panel, and I didn't know how to follow with all the professionals around me, and I was really nervous. So I guess I'll just start talking about my experience as a undocumented Latina trying to pursue a career in tech. So for me, I came with my biological parents to the U.S. when I was 7, and I thought it was going to be the most amazing experience I could ever dreamed of. Today where I stand, I think if I would have been my choice, I think that would have been the worst choice I would have ever made. Because I think about the worries that I have to go through every day. I have to worry about not being deported or taking care of, every 2 years I have to renew my DACA. How do I pay for that? How do I get through those obstacles? And if I would be pursuing a career in tech in Mexico, I would probably just have to worry about how to pay for school. And so here I found myself struggling through high school because I didn't know how I was going to get to college. I have 6 other siblings, and we're out of 7. I'm the first one to have graduated high school and first one pursuing a career in college. I found Level Playing Field Institute's SMASH program when I was a freshman. It was a really big eye-opener when I got to the program and I got to stay at Stanford for 5 weeks. I got to share 5 amazing weeks, 3 years in a row with 79 other students of color that looked just like I did and that had similar experiences, and it was just an amazing experience because I didn't know that there were so many people struggling through the same things as I was. Luckily, I made a big family there. I was able to connect with Level Playing Field Institute, Capor Center, and they opened their doors decided that my best bet would be finding a network that would help me figure out what I wanted to do. That was, my choices were drop out of my dream, which was pursue a career in tech, or keep working and then later get back to it. And I chose that route. I didn't know how I was going to do it because I didn't have a social security number, or I didn't have any other documents that would represent me as a dreamer or something like that. That was the categories I fell in throughout that year. And then I started my internship with K4 Center for Social Impact, and I got to work with their former senior tech advisor, Jennifer Whale. And I did a research project with other Latinos or students of color that are now in tech and their pathway to college. It was really surprising to me that a lot of these people did not go to college. They went to college for other degrees, but they had pursued their tech skills on their own. And I think now that I know my pathway to my career, I see the other problems in education systems and the structures where there's a lack of mentorship. I didn't find mentors around my community, and I had to go digging for them. Last week I got the opportunity to attend Code 2040's tech track, and I met, out of probably 12 tech companies that we visited, I met one person that was a person of color in a leadership role out of 12 companies. That was just amazing because there's not a lot of representation there. And then the systems and structures of schools or tech companies is just awful. I don't have the words to put it. I have a close friend that was also pursuing a career in tech, and she dropped out in her second year. She couldn't take the pressure. She couldn't find this right support system, and the way she opened up to talk about her experience was just, it was hurting to me, and it was also really inspiring because I thought about whether I wanted to keep pursuing my career in tech because that's what I want to do, or if I want to keep doing it because I want to prove people wrong and show that a Latina in tech can actually build through college and get to where she wants to be. So I'm really glad that I got this opportunity to speak and be here. My experience is something that has been really hard to share with people, and really, I get really bad imposter syndrome. So I just want to thank all of you for letting me speak to you and for having me here.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Omar Ruvalcaba. He's assistant professor for the psychology department at Cal State University, Northridge. And he got his education at UCLA and his graduate degrees at UC Santa Cruz. Yes. So in his work, he conducts research and explores the relationship between culture and computer science learning, and more interested in understanding the roots, the ways to STEM education. So we're very happy that you're here with us, and let's welcome him to this event.
So thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with these colegas. I'd also like to share that I've also been very nervous about doing this talk, and I think that's important to share those experiences and legitimize them, right? These are experiences that we all have as you're practicing these skills, and when you're being in settings where they haven't been the most of welcoming experiences. So rather than focusing on a specific research study, I'd like to give a more personal view of my trajectory through the pipeline in the social sciences and why I'm interested in computer science and why I think this type of research matters. So I don't know how far back to take it, but I grew up in Inglewood, and I actually now I'm living in Inglewood again. And I grew up playing video games and really being interested in how to make them. So I was playing Final Fantasy VI, I was playing Super Nintendo, and I was like really interested, like, well, how do you make these things? How can I, get my hands on coding? Because back then there was also the lack of knowledge and understanding what coding meant. So I thought coding meant if I knew coding, I could make video games. Much like the many experiences that people are mentioning here, and for those of you who have read Jane Margolis's book, Stuck in the Shallow End, there was very few resources in my school, Inglewood High School. So I sought out the courses on computer programming. There was a typing course, so I took that. Then finally I found the computer programming course. I took that. It was another typing course. So we got to learn things like what DVD stands for, RAM, ROM, things like that. We got help in applying to places like Sizzlers, and that was seen as a great thing when one of us was hired for that type of job. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, in that moment, I thought, like, well, weren't we supposed to be learning some computer programming? Entering college, I sort of left that behind. I was still interested in tech, but I thought, well, I don't have any background in computer programming, so I got into UCLA, so I chose a major that I thought was the most prestigious I could think of, brain surgery. So I was like, I'm going to be a brain surgeon. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to be a brain surgeon. That first quarter, for me, it was this very surprising, so I was put on probation that first year. I got a C, I got a D, I dropped another class. And I remember walking back to my dorm with this feeling of just having failed my family as the first in my family to go to college, and younger siblings coming after me. But then I got back to the dorms and I realized, wait, all the other Latinos on my floor were also on probation, like all the Latino males. At the moment, it felt good. I was like, okay, I'm not alone in this, right? But then after some, But after some reflection, I realized, wait, what's going on here? Like, why is it that all the Latino men are on probation? To me, it was like, it can't be that we're just all unqualified. What's going on in the situation? So I sort of went through college not knowing what to do, but thinking of how to incorporate my interest in technology and digital media. So I eventually decided on psychology, and I do a minor in education, and I realized through educational research, there's ways to look at the academic pipeline and look at how people get into computer science careers. So maybe I can't get into that, but how can I look at what's stopping others from going through that pipeline and help others who may be going through the same experiences that I went through, that aren't just limited to computer science. So my career has been pretty much that. At each step, deciding how can I keep doing research that helps give back to my community, and how do I keep the technology component? So when I finally got into a PhD program, it was in developmental psychology. It was the only psychology program I applied to because of an advisor who gave me that advice to apply to this type of program. And in other programs, especially in psychology, you have to argue for the importance of studying culture. what does culture mean, cultural practices, a value that different communities bring into developmental settings. So it's developmental psychology. My advisor already took that for granted. It's important to study culture. I had to argue for the inclusion of understanding how do youth and children learn computer science concepts. So for my dissertation, that's what I looked at. Cultural variance and how Mexican heritage and European heritage children collaborate while learning to computer program. So there's research in the computer sciences and education that looks at collaborative learning. It's called pair programming when learning to computer program, but it's great work, but I also noticed it's very rigid in how they structure collaboration. One person gets assigned a driver role, one gets a navigator role, 10 minutes pass and then they switch. That's not how I saw collaboration happening in my community and from my experience. From my experience, you were raised to be educado, to be acomedido. When you saw an opportunity to help someone, you jumped in and helped. So I thought, well, is there a way we could structure collaboration in a way that would be more inclusive? So for my dissertation study, I looked at, well, if you just leave it open-ended completely, how is it that they're collaborating? How is it that the children will collaborate of these two different backgrounds if it's unstructured? And what I found is that the Mexican heritage children, so these are 8 to 10-year-olds, pretty much what I described earlier. When they saw an opportunity to help, they would jump in and help. And oftentimes, they were moving in the same direction. There was still some discussion happening, right? So it's not, oftentimes in psychology research, you see Mexican heritage children being positioned as silent, as nonverbal. There was discussion happening, but oftentimes that discussion and that movement was towards a shared goal, and oftentimes the goal was figured out as they were moving forward. For the European heritage children, you saw more discussion about whose turn it was and segmenting contributions, right? So you have this variance that is important, and you see the Mexican heritage children collaborating in a way that I would argue is now valued in tech industry. They see an opportunity, they take initiative, but something's happening along the pipeline that by the time they get to me as university students, I asked them to interview a family member, and I asked them not to use the family member's real name because I want that family member to remain anonymous for this paper, and they get caught up on, wait, what do you mean by random name? When you just this little bit of freedom, they're self-conscious, not self-conscious, but they've been affected by this system of education so much that by this point, they're questioning themselves that much. That when I tell them, pick a random name for your participant, even that they're questioning. So one thing in my research I've also realized now working at a Cal State is, at a Cal State, you don't have PhD students. You have grad students, but they're master's levels. So some of the work I was doing before, I can't do anymore, especially going out into the community and working with families and children. So I've had to shift to focus, well, not have to because I'm excited to do it, but my my focus has shifted to looking at university students and their experience regarding microaggressions, the experience where moments that they've decided, I might want to leave this major and pursue something else. Like what happens in those situations? What are those situations that encourage them to keep on going? And I don't think it's enough to focus on things like grit, because grit don't take into account that pushing yourself through this and just keeping going forward, yes, we can do that and some of us do that, but a lot don't. But then what are the mental health consequences of doing this, right? So I can relate to what you shared, right, about this anxiety, right? I've had to go, I'm seeing somebody about it, and I think, I'm not ashamed to mention that because there is some anxiety attached to public speaking and teaching and questioning yourself so much that even in therapy, I was questioning, am I doing this right? I don't think I'm therapying right. But that's when I realized it's so internalized that it's impacting me in every context of my life. So how are these situations, being the only person of your background, having to push yourself and getting good reviews? I've gotten good reviews for my teaching, and still I rationalize it as they're being too nice. right? How does that impact the next steps we're taking, and what can we do in research to take into account all the spheres that make us human, right? Looking at the pipeline, the institutional factors, looking at the mental health aspects, and looking at how research can help support in changing this. I think another important thing to consider is that we bring a lot of resources to the table as Latinos, as individuals, having very diverse experiences. How many of you have anxiety speaking, for those of you who speak another language other than English, how many of you get anxious when you're speaking with somebody who you perceive as a really good speaker in that language, right? So for me, it would be Spanish, right? Yeah, I feel that way. So that idea could be a research study, and that idea came from my experience with that, and at first I thought it was only me, but sharing that, I realized, wait, I'm not the only one experiencing that. Is there some anxiety attached to losing our first language? How is that tied to identity? And then how does that tie into being a computer scientist and identifying as a computer scientist? So these experiences you all bring can help address issues and areas that other people just can't because they haven't had the experience that can make people think, well, maybe we should calibrate the camera so it takes into account how light reflects off of darker skin, right? So I'm thinking of so if you YouTube racist HP camera, you'll see a video of a man, a black man, using this camera tracking software where it's not working with him, but it works with his white coworker. So you can interpret that as, well, is that racism? I think it's tied to that, but really what I think it points out is like there was a lack of having somebody on that team that would think, maybe we should consider this. So really take into account what resources are we all bringing and how we can build off of each other's work to sort of change this. Research, education, practitioners, people in the industry, and I'll just stop there. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Our last panelist, but certainly, we're looking forward to more conversation, is Vianey Munoz, and she is a computer engineer who has joined HackBright Academy. And HackBright Academy is an all-female software engineering program that teaches. It is an app measuring state affordability based on cost of living, salaries, safety, and demographics. But the most important thing that I see from your bio here is that this particular academy has been a great source of support, like in terms of your own development as an engineer, but also having being a transnational individual, right? So you want to talk a little bit more about that? And welcome to the panel.
Hello, my name is Vianey Munoz. I am from Mexico. I was born and raised in Guadalajara. So I graduated 10 years ago from computer engineering from a public university in Guadalajara, and I have been working in tech since then. First as a developer, then as a project manager, and in my last job I was the software development manager for the government in Guadalajara. I got married last year, so that's how I ended up here. So here I am in a new country, unemployed and without a clue on how to start building my career here. Being a woman in tech in Mexico can be really intimidating, but being a woman and Latina here is something else. But back then I didn't know that, so that's why I got married. So, I mean, in Mexico you know that there are not enough women in tech, but I don't think we are really aware of it. I know I wasn't. Even when you hear all types of jokes about women in tech, even when some people will assume that you have your job only because you are sleeping with your boss. But if a guy gets the same job, they will assume he must be super smart. And even when all these things are happening around you, I never felt really like discriminated. I thought it was just part of the decision that I made when I decided to become an engineer, because I mean, it is a career for men, right? So then I moved here, and I think I became aware of it. You heard the term diversity everywhere. I started to experience these weird situations where people are trying to be nice with you, but they end up being mean or racist. And so, in other words, I started to realize that I belong to the group of minorities, and then I really started to miss home. At home, I had never had to worry about my color of skin or my last name or my accent. Anyways, I started to look for jobs related to my experience, and I got no answers. So I realized this will be painful, and I was totally lost about how to apply. I didn't know anybody, and after a few months of trying, I was so ready to give up on my career and find a job anywhere doing anything. I thought, well, maybe if I study a master or a certification, I will get a job easier. Maybe it's because my credentials or my studies are from Mexico. Yeah, no. The prices are crazy. And so I realized education here is great, but it is very expensive too. The idea of finishing college with a big loan is still so incredible for me. Then I heard about code bootcamps, and I always liked coding. This was totally new for me, so I started to read about it and search about it, and it seems like a good investment. I mean, it is expensive still, but not as expensive as a master's degree. So I have to say I was a little skeptical about it. I mean, becoming a software engineer in only 12 weeks. I started 4 years, I have 10 years in the field, and I have coded something like a while ago, and I never felt as a software engineer because in my mind, software engineer means like you started to code when you were 8, so that wasn't my case. So even though it seems worth to try, so I started to apply to a few boot camps, and I got accepted, and at the end I chose HackBright. And HackBright is a bootcamp only for women, and I choose them because I thought it would be great to have a network of women in tech. I never had that in Mexico, and I started to feel like I will really need it here. So I finished 1 week ago, and so far I think is the best decision that I ever made. It has been a great experience. The first week I was still a little skeptical, but then I started to know all these 34 women from different backgrounds. And I mean, I started to feel fueled, and these girls had different backgrounds from mechanical engineering, molecular and cell biology, to major in arts, philosophy, etc. And everybody was so energetic about becoming software engineer. So I knew that's what I needed it, surround myself with energy. And the program was actually very challenging, and the support system is very good too. The only thing that I did notice the first day is the same, like we were just only a few Latinas in the group, but I mean, at least we were only women, so that was good. And so now that I finished, I can see why it's working. I mean, there is a big need for developers, and traditional education is very expensive. So boot camps are taking advantage of this. You learn and focus on things that you will actually use in real life. I mean, I keep waiting for the day that I can use half of the stuff that I learned in college. In a boot camp, you focus only in programming. I'm not saying it's not important to know everything about computer science, but I think you can learn that in the go. And a boot camp is not supposed to teach you everything. They just teach you how coding works, and what is more important, how to teach yourself, and from there you can learn anything you want. I am not familiar with other boot camps, but HackBright, I think they does an amazing job connecting you with people. From the beginning, you have one advisor and you have 3 mentors, and these are men and women that are volunteering there and that are working in tech. and they are committed to make a difference here. It was so amazing watching them supporting us during the process. That was, for me, that is a great way to make a difference. So HackBright has partners company, and at the end, they connect you with them. These companies are making an effort to shore the gap in the diversity, so the job hunting seems less intimidating. You still have to suffer the process of interviewing and whiteboarding, which seems pretty tough, but at least they know about boot camps and are open to hire graduates from them. And also, I think it's not only about how to code. They gave us talks about how to interview, how to negotiate your salary. They took us to some companies so we can learn about their culture. They also prepare us to face the reality in tech right now. We will face unfortunate situations. We will be a minority, and this can be very hard. But you are not alone. We can count with a huge network of people, even if we are not longer in the bootcamp. And I really wish I had this in college. Bootcamps, in my opinion, are a great way to put your foot on the door in tech. And I mean, you can study online for free too, but the network and the support system is something that you will definitely need. The only problem that I find about bootcamps is that for me, they are too expensive, and the scholarships are very limited. I found a survey online made by Coast Report, and according to the survey, 66% of graduates report being employed in a full-time job requiring the skills learned at the bootcamp, and the average age is 31 years old with 7 years of experience and with at least one bachelor degree, and they have never worked as a programmers. So it seems that bootcamps are more for people who want to change careers, not for people without a degree. And on average, students posted their salary by 38% after the bootcamp, but only 36% of graduates are women, and 63% of the students are white, and only 20% have Hispanic roots. White students saw the biggest change in salary after the program, and Hispanic students saw the lowest. And only 3% of the students got a scholarship to pay for the tuition. This is something that I also saw in HackBright, talking about ethnicity and race, but at least they are helping women. So for me, that's good. So the tuition is expensive, and if you are really paying your university loan and don't have a wealthy family supporting you to make this transition, it must be very hard to quit your job, ask for another loan, and just pray that you can actually get a job that helps you pay the 2 loans. So for me, bootcamps have pros and cons. And I know the job hunting is gonna be the hardest part, but now, because now I'm gonna experience all these things that I have been hearing and reading about diversity, but I hope to make it and help to increase a